The morning sky over Seoul was no longer blue. It was gray and filled with smoke. Kim Dae-ho pressed his face against the cold window of his small apartment and watched the last human defense, a tower, crumble into dust. The alien ships hung in the air like dark clouds that would never go away. 3 months ago, nobody knew what a Vorthok was. Now, everyone knew they were the new masters of Earth. Dae-ho was 34 years old. Before the invasion, he had been a chef at a popular restaurant in Gangnam. He loved making food that made people smile. He loved the smell of garlic sizzling in hot oil and the sound of customers laughing over their meals. Now his restaurant was gone. The whole street was gone. Most of the city was gone too. The Vorthok did not destroy things for fun. They destroyed things that got in their way. They wanted Earth for its water and metals. They wanted humans for workers. Everything else was just obstacles to remove. Dae-ho had been hiding in his apartment for 2 weeks. He ate canned food and drank bottled water. He listened to the emergency radio broadcasts until they stopped coming. The last message was simple. All human military forces have surrendered. Report to your nearest Vorthok collection point for work assignment. He did not want to report anywhere. He wanted to disappear. Someone knocked on his door. Hard, fast knocks that made his heart jump. Dae-ho looked through the peephole and saw Lee So-jin from the apartment down the hall. She was bleeding. Her left shoulder was burned and black. Behind her stood 3 other people he did not recognize. Dae-ho, please open the door, So-jin whispered. We need help. Dae-ho knew So-jin before the war. She worked at a bank and always said good morning when they met in the elevator. She seemed like a normal office worker. But now she carried a plasma rifle and had scars on her face. Go away, Dae-ho said through the door. I cannot help you. They killed everyone at the resistance base, So-jin said. Her voice was shaking. We have nowhere else to go. Dae-ho closed his eyes. He had seen what happened to people who helped the resistance. The Vorthok found them with their advanced scanners. Then they turned them into ash with their weapons. No trial, no questions. Just ash. If I help you, we all die, Dae-ho said. If you do not help us, we die anyway, said a man's voice. Please, we just need somewhere to rest for 1 hour.
Ow.
Dae-ho looked through the peephole again. So-jin was getting weaker. Blood was dripping on the floor. The 3 people with her looked tired and scared. One was just a teenager. He opened the door. They came inside quickly and quietly. So-jin sat down hard on his couch and closed her eyes. The bleeding man was Park Hyun-woo. He used to work at a tech company. The teenager was Young Min-sik. The woman was Cho Yoon-ji, a teacher. What happened to your base? Dae-ho asked while he got bandages from his bathroom. It's betrayed, Hyun-woo said. Someone told the Vorthok where we were hiding. They came at dawn with those flying machines. We were lucky to escape. Dae-ho cleaned So-jin's wound. The plasma burn was deep, but not deadly. She would live if it did not get infected. Are you the last ones? Dae-ho asked. No, Yoon-ji said. There are other groups, but not many. Maybe 50 people in the whole city are still fighting. 50 people in a city of 10 million. Dae-ho thought about how impossible that sounded. What is your plan? He asked. Survive, Hyun-woo said. Find other groups. Keep fighting. Fighting with what? They have ships that can destroy buildings. They have soldiers in armor that bullets cannot break. They have weapons that turn people into smoke. We have something they do not have, So-jin said weakly. What? We know this city better than they do. We know how to hide. We know how humans think. Dae-ho looked at these 4 people in his apartment. They were brave, but they were also dying slowly. The resistance was not winning. It was just delaying the end. His communication device made a sound. All devices in the city made the same sound at the same time. It was the daily Vorthok announcement. A cold, mechanical voice spoke in broken Korean. All humans in District 7 report to Collection Point 12 tomorrow at dawn. Bring personal items only. Work assignments will be given based on skills and usefulness. Cooperation ensures survival. Resistance ensures death. The announcement repeated in 10 other languages. District 7, that is here, Minsik said. Daeho felt his stomach turn cold. He had been hoping they would forget about his district. Some areas of the city had been ignored for weeks, but now it was his turn. What kind of work assignments? Yunji asked. Hyen-Woo had been monitoring Vorthal communications with stolen equipment. Scientists and doctors get sent to research facilities. Engineers go to construction projects. Most other people go to labor camps. Nobody knows what happens at the labor camps. And if we do not report? Daeho asked. They search building by building. They use sensors that can detect human heartbeats through walls. They find everyone eventually. Sojin tried to sit up straighter. We need to leave the city. Find somewhere in the mountains. And then what? Live in caves eating grass until winter kills us? Better than being slaves? Daeho walked to his kitchen and made tea. It might be his last time using his own stove. He thought about his life before the war. Making food for happy customers. Creating new recipes. The satisfaction of a perfectly cooked meal. I am going to report tomorrow, he said. The others stared at him. Shh, you cannot, Sojin said. They will work you to death. Maybe I will find a way to survive. Maybe I will find opportunities you cannot find hiding in ruins. Opportunities for what? I do not know yet. Daeho gave everyone tea and some rice. They ate in silence while the sun set behind the alien ships. At dawn, the 4 resistance fighters left through his back window. They said goodbye without promises to meet again. Everyone knew the chances were small. Daeho packed 1 bag with clothes and personal items. He left everything else behind. At the door, he turned back to look at his apartment one last time. His kitchen. His books. His life from before. Then he walked outside to join the line of humans walking toward Collection Point 12. The Vorthok soldiers were 8 feet tall and looked like giant insects walking upright. They wore dark armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. They did not speak to the humans. They just pointed where to go with their long, thin arms at the collection point. Humans stood in long lines while Vorthok officers scanned them with handheld devices. The devices could somehow read what skills each person had. Scientists went to one group, engineers to another, doctors to a third. When Daeho reached the front of the line, the scanning device made different sounds than it had for other people. The Vorthok officer tilted its triangular head and made clicking noises. Another officer came over. This one had more decorations on its armor. It scanned Daeho again. More clicking sounds. The second officer spoke in broken Korean. Food preparation specialists. Interesting. It marked something on a tablet and handed Daeho a metal badge with symbols on it. Administrative Complex 7. Report at noon. Daeho looked at the badge. He did not understand the symbols, but he understood that his life had just changed in a way he could not predict. As he walked toward Administrative Complex 7, he wondered what the Vorthok wanted with a human cook. The Vorthok Administrative Complex 7 was the tallest building Daeho had ever seen. It rose into the sky like a giant black needle made of metal and glass that seemed to grow from the ground itself. Strange lights moved up and down its surface like glowing veins. The air around it hummed with energy that made his teeth ache. Daeho stood at the main entrance with 20 other humans. All of them wore the same confused expression. None of them knew why they were here. A Vorthok soldier, twice as tall as any human, gestured for them to follow. Its movements were sharp and mechanical. It led them through corridors that curved in impossible ways. The walls were smooth and black. Lights appeared wherever they walked and disappeared after they passed. The group stopped at a large room with windows that showed the entire city below. Seoul looked small and broken from this height. Smoke still rose from several districts. "You will wait here," the soldier said in choppy Korean. Then it left. The humans looked at each other nervously. Nobody spoke for several minutes. "Does anyone know what this place is?" asked a young woman with short hair. "Administrative complex," said an older man. "That means offices. Management." "Management of what?" Us, Deho said quietly. Another soldier entered the room. This one was different. Its armor had more decorations, and its movements seemed less mechanical. When it spoke, its Korean was better. I am Subcommander Vex. You have been selected for special duties based on your previous occupations. You will serve the senior staff of this facility. Pointed at different humans as it spoke. You. Medical care for human workers. You. Maintenance of human technology systems. You. Food. Preparation for senior staff. The last one was Deho. Food preparation. Deho asked. I thought your people used machines for nutrition. Subcommander Vex's head turned toward him. Its large black eyes reflected the light like mirrors. Standard nutrition, yes. But senior staff have heard reports from other conquered worlds, reports of human food preparation rituals. These rituals are of scientific interest. Rituals? The process by which humans transform basic nutrition into complex sensory experiences. Our scientists wish to understand this phenomenon. Deho realized they were talking about cooking, but they thought cooking was some kind of religious ceremony. Follow Subcommander Vex said to him. They walked through more twisting corridors. Deho saw other humans working at various tasks. They all looked tired and scared. Some were cleaning. Others were carrying equipment. None of them looked happy to see him. Subcommander Vex stopped at a door that opened by itself. Inside was a room unlike anything Deho had ever seen. It looked like a kitchen from a science fiction movie. Every surface was silver metal. Strange machines lined the walls. In the center was a large table covered with buttons and screens. This is your work area, Subcommander Vex said. The machines can create any molecular structure from our database. We have analyzed the basic components of food from over 100 conquered worlds. Deho walked around the room. He touched one of the machines. A screen appeared showing thousands of items in languages he could not read. How do I use this? Voice commands. The system understands basic Korean. Say the name of any ingredient, and the machine will synthesize it. Any ingredient. Any ingredient that exists in our database. Deho thought about this. If they had conquered over 100 worlds, their database must be enormous. What about fresh ingredients? Plants that are alive. Subcommander Vex made a clicking sound. There is a growing facility connected to this room. You may cultivate living plant matter if required for your rituals. It led him through another door into a room filled with artificial sunlight. The walls were covered with empty growing containers. Tubes and wires connected everything together. This can simulate the growing conditions of any world in the galaxy, Subcommander Vex explained. Temperature, humidity, soil composition, atmospheric pressure, anything you require. Deho stared at the growing room. He could grow vegetables from Earth here. Real vegetables, not just synthetic copies. When do I start? He asked. Tomorrow. Senior staff will observe your first food preparation ritual. They are very curious about human methods. Subcommander Vex left him alone in the kitchen. Deho spent an hour exploring the equipment. Everything was far more advanced than anything humans had built. But the basic ideas were the same. Heat sources, cutting tools, storage containers. He tried using voice commands. Tomato, he said. A machine hummed and produced a perfect red tomato. Deho picked it up and smelled it. It had no smell at all. He cut it open. It looked exactly like a tomato inside, but it tasted like nothing. Garlic, he said. The machine produced garlic cloves that looked perfect but had no flavor. Everything the machines made was nutritionally identical to real food but completely bland. It was like eating pictures of food instead of actual food. A human voice spoke behind him. They cannot synthesize flavor properly. Deho turned around. A man about his own age stood in the doorway. He was thin and wore the same gray clothes as all the other human workers. Who are you? Deho asked. Park Hae-en-woo. I work in the data management section downstairs. Deho recognized the name. This was one of the resistance fighters who had been in his apartment. What are you doing here? Daeho whispered. I could ask you the same thing, but I already know. You reported for work assignment like a good citizen. I had no choice. Everyone has choices. You chose to collaborate with the enemy. The words stung because they were partially true. But Daeho was tired of being judged. What would you have me do? Hide in ruins and starve? Fight. Fight with what? You said yourself there are only 50 resistance fighters left in the whole city. Hyenwu looked around the advanced kitchen. Maybe you are right. Maybe this is better than fighting. How did you get assigned to data management? I used to work with computers. They need humans to manage data about human populations. We understand human behavior better than they do. Is that useful for the resistance? Very useful. I see all the reports about human workers. I know which facilities are important. I know which Vorthok officers make the big decisions. Hyenwu moved closer and lowered his voice even more. There are still resistance cells operating. Small groups. We lost the big base, but we adapted. Now we work inside their facilities and gather information.
Hey.
What kind of information? Troop movements, supply lines, weaknesses in their security, and something else. Something strange, what? Some of the Vorthok are changing. Not physically, but their behavior is different from when they first arrived. Some of them are asking questions about human culture, art, music, things that have nothing to do with managing a conquered population. Daeho thought about Subcommander Dex's interest in human food preparation, rituals. Maybe they are trying to understand us better so they can control us. Better, maybe. Or maybe exposure to humans is affecting them in ways they did not expect. Door opened somewhere in the distance. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. I have to go, Hyenwu said, but we should talk again. Your position here could be very valuable. Valuable how? You will be cooking for senior staff. High-ranking officers, people who make important decisions, you will hear things, see things, learn things, and then what? Then you decide if you want to keep collaborating or if you want to help us find a way to fight back. Hyenwu left through the growing room. Daeho was alone again with the silent sheens and artificial lights. He picked up the flavorless tomato and thought about what Hyenwu had said. Tomorrow he would cook for alien officers who had conquered his world. He would serve them food and smile and pretend to be a willing servant. But maybe that was not all he would be doing. Maybe he would also be gathering information, learning about his enemies, looking for weaknesses. Maybe there was more than one way to resist. Daeho woke up at 5 in the morning inside his small sleeping quarters. The room had no windows and the walls were the same gray metal as everything else in the complex. He had been given a narrow bed, a small desk, and a cabinet for his few belongings. It was not much, but it was better than a labor camp. Today was his first cooking demonstration. Subcommander Thex had told him that 5 mid-level Vorthok officers would attend. They wanted to observe human food preparation techniques for their research reports. Daeho had spent all night thinking about what to cook. The synthetic ingredients had no flavor, but he had an idea. Yesterday evening, he had planted seeds in the growing facility. Korean vegetables that would take weeks to mature. But he could work with what was available. He walked to the kitchen and began exploring the machines more carefully. The database was enormous. Ingredients from dozens of worlds. He found entries for Earth animals, but also creatures from other planets. Some had interesting chemical compounds that might add flavor. Computer, show me all ingredients with high umami content, he said. The screen displayed hundreds of options. Many were from Earth, soybeans, mushrooms, aged cheeses, fish, but others were from alien worlds. Something called Rigel sea fungus, fermented zeta root, crystallized protein from the moons of Vega. He started experimenting. First, he synthesized soy sauce using the Earth recipe. It tasted bland like everything else from the machines, but when he mixed it with fermented zeta root, something interesting happened. The combination created a flavor that was familiar but stronger than any soy sauce he had ever tasted. Next, he worked on meat. The machines could create perfect copies of beef, but without any flavor. However, he discovered that certain alien spices could penetrate the protein structures in ways Earth spices could not. A purple powder from the Andromeda sector seemed to add the taste the meat was missing. By noon, he had prepared a simple meal. Marinated beef that was similar to bulgogi. Fermented vegetables that were like kimchi, but made with ingredients from 3 different worlds. Rice that had been enhanced with nutrients from alien grains. Sub-Commander Vex arrived with 5 other Vorthok officers. They were all different sizes, and their armor had different markings. But they moved in the same mechanical way, and their black eyes showed no emotion. "Begin the food preparation ritual," Sub-Commander Vex said. Deho felt nervous. These beings had conquered his world. They could kill him with a thought. And now he was supposed to cook for them like they were customers at his old restaurant. "First, I will explain what I am doing," Deho said. "Cooking is not just about nutrition. It is about creating flavors that work together. Sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. When you combine them correctly, they create experiences that are more than just the sum of their parts." The Vorthok officers watched silently as he heated oil in a pan. The sizzling sound filled the quiet kitchen. Deho added the marinated meat. The smell of cooking protein and spices began to spread through the room. One of the officers made a clicking sound. Its head tilted to one side. "What is that sensory input?" it asked. "Smell," Deho said. "The aroma of cooking food. It prepares your digestive system and creates anticipation for the meal." Anticipation? The feeling of wanting something before you have it? It makes the food taste better when you finally eat it. The Vorthok exchanged glances. They spoke to each other in their own language, which sounded like insects buzzing. Deho continued cooking. He added the fermented vegetables to another pan. The sharp smell of fermentation mixed with the meat aroma. He cooked rice in a third pot, adding the alien grains that would enhance both nutrition and flavor. "Why do you use multiple heating sources simultaneously?" another officer asked. "Because different ingredients need different cooking methods. The meat needs high heat to create a brown surface but stay tender inside. The vegetables need medium heat to warm them without destroying their texture. The rice needs gentle heat and precise water amounts." This seems inefficient. One heat source would use less energy, but it would not create the same result. Good cooking is not about efficiency. It is about creating the best possible experience. The concept seemed to confuse them. When the food was ready, Deho arranged it on plates the way he had learned in his restaurant. Not just functional, but beautiful. Colors and textures that were pleasing to look at. "Visual presentation is also important," he explained. "Humans eat with their eyes first. If food looks good, it tastes better." He served the plates to the 5 officers. They stared at the food without moving. "How do we consume this?" one asked. "With utensils, chopsticks, or forks. Take small amounts and chew slowly. Pay attention to the different flavors as they develop in your mouth." Sub-Commander Vex picked up a piece of meat with metal implements that extended from its armor. It placed the food in its mouth and began to chew. The reaction was immediate. Vex stopped moving completely. Its black eyes became wider. It chewed very slowly, then swallowed. Then it made a sound Deho had never heard from a Vorthok before. A low humming noise. "What is this sensation?" Dex asked. "Flavor, taste. The combination of sweet from the marinade, salty from the sauce, umami from the protein, and spices that add complexity." The other officers began eating. Each one had a similar reaction. They stopped their mechanical movements and focused completely on the food. One officer tried the fermented vegetables and made the same humming sound. "This is ... Another officer started to say, then stopped. "There is no word in our language for this experience. The word in Korean is delicious," Deho said. "It means something that tastes very good." "Delicious," Dex repeated slowly. "We have never encountered this concept before." Now the officers finished their meal in silence. They kept making the humming sounds. One officer asked for more of the fermented vegetables. Another wanted to try combining different parts of the meal together. Commander Vex, who wore the most decorations on his armor, had not spoken during the meal. But now he looked directly at Deho. Human, he said. In our society, we consume nutrition paste that provides perfect nutritional balance. It contains everything our bodies need. Nothing more, nothing less. Yes, sir. But this food you have prepared, it provides more than nutrition. Yes, sir. It provides pleasure. The word hung in the air like something dangerous. Pleasure is not a concept we have explored, Commander Vex continued. Pleasure serves no functional purpose. It does not increase efficiency or improve performance. Maybe not, Deho said carefully. But it makes life more interesting. Interesting. Commander Vex seemed to taste the word like he had tasted the food. Another concept we do not have words for. Sub-Commander Vex leaned forward. Can you prepare other meals? Different combinations of these flavors. Yes, there are thousands of different recipes. Different ingredients can create completely different experiences. We wish to study this further, Commander Vex announced. You will prepare meals for senior staff on a regular schedule. We must understand what this pleasure is and why humans value it. How often would you like me to cook? Daily, and you will teach other humans to assist you. We want to observe multiple examples of this food preparation ritual. After the officers left, Deho sat alone in his kitchen. He had succeeded better than he had hoped. Not only were the Vorthok interested in his cooking, they wanted more. They wanted to study pleasure and interesting experiences. He thought about what Park Hyun-wha had said. Some Vorthok were changing, becoming curious about human culture. Today he had seen proof of that. These officers had experienced something completely new, and they wanted to understand it. Maybe cooking really could be a form of resistance, not by fighting the enemy, but by introducing them to ideas that their rigid society had never allowed them to explore. For the first time since the invasion, Deho felt something like hope. Word spread through the Vorthok administrative complex faster than Deho had expected. Within 3 days of his first cooking demonstration, he received requests from 12 different officers who wanted to experience these new flavor sensations. Sub-Commander Vex visited him every morning now, not to give orders, but to ask questions about cooking techniques and to request specific types of meals. The alien's mechanical speech patterns were changing too. It spoke more slowly, as if thinking about each word. Today, I would like to experience what you call spicy, Vex said during one of these visits. Spicy food can be intense for first-time eaters, Deho warned. Maybe we should start with mild spices. No. I want to understand the full range of these sensations. Prepare the most spicy meal you can create. Deho spent the morning developing a new recipe. He combined earth chili peppers with alien spices that had similar chemical compounds. The result was a sauce that made his eyes water just from the smell. He prepared Korean fire chicken with this enhanced sauce, along with cooling side dishes to balance the heat. When next tasted it, the alien's entire body went rigid for 30 seconds. Then it began making rapid clicking sounds. This sensation, Dex said, breathing heavily. It causes pain but also pleasure. How is this possible? Spicy food triggers the same nerves that sense pain, but your brain releases chemicals to deal with the pain. Those chemicals create good feelings. My brain is releasing chemicals in response to food. All brains do that. Food affects how you think and feel, not just how your body functions. Vex ate the entire meal despite the intense heat. When it finished, it sat quietly for 10 minutes, processing what it had experienced. I require more meals like this, it finally said. By the end of the week, Deho was cooking for 20 different Vorthok officers. Each one wanted to try different flavors and combinations. Some preferred sweet foods. Others wanted sour or bitter tastes. A few became obsessed with umami-rich dishes that had deep, complex flavors. The strangest part was watching how their behavior changed. Vorthok officers who had always moved with mechanical precision now lingered over their meals. They asked questions about ingredients and cooking methods. Some even tried to describe flavors using words that did not exist in their language. Cho Min-ho, the former biochemist who worked in the research division, managed to visit Daeho during a shift change. He brought important information. "I have been studying Vorthok brain scans from our medical database," Minho said quietly. "The officers who eat your food are showing unusual neural activity." "What kind of activity?" "New connections forming between different brain regions. Areas that were never active before are lighting up during and after meals. It is like their brains are rewiring themselves." "Is that dangerous?" "Not dangerous, but definitely permanent." Once a Vorthok experiences these flavor sensations, their brain chemistry changes forever. They cannot go back to being satisfied with simple nutrition paste. This explained why more officers kept requesting meals. They were not just curious anymore. They needed the flavor experiences. "There is something else," Minho continued. "I overheard conversations in the research lab. Some officers are starting to question other aspects of their society. If food can provide pleasure, they wonder what else they might be missing." "What kinds of things?" "Art, music, individual preferences instead of group conformity. Concepts that have been forbidden in Vorthok society for thousands of years." Before Minho could say more, footsteps echoed in the corridor. He left quickly through the growing room. That afternoon brought Daeho's biggest challenge yet. Sub-Commander Vex arrived with news that made his hands shake. "General Crix wishes to dine with you tomorrow evening," Vex announced. General Crix was the supreme commander of the entire Earth's occupation force. Daeho had seen him only in propaganda broadcasts. He was larger than other Vorthok, with black armor covered in symbols of rank and conquest. He commanded over 50,000 alien soldiers. "What should I prepare for him?" Daeho asked. "Something that will demonstrate the full potential of human food preparation. The general has heard reports about these flavor experiences from other officers. He wishes to understand why so many of his staff are spending time discussing meals instead of focusing on their duties." Daeho spent all night planning the perfect meal. It had to be impressive enough for the most powerful Vorthok on Earth, but not so overwhelming that it would seem threatening. He decided on Korean royal court cuisine. Multiple small dishes that would showcase different flavors and techniques. Grilled meats with complex marinades. Fermented vegetables aged to perfect sourness. Soups with layers of taste that developed slowly. Rice prepared with ingredients from 5 different worlds. The next evening, General Crix arrived alone. He was even more intimidating in person. His armor was covered with battle scars, and his movements had the confidence of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds. When he looked at Daeho, it felt like being examined by a predator. "You are the human who creates these flavor experiences," General Crix said. His voice was deeper than other Vorthok, and his Korean was nearly perfect. "Yes, General. My officers speak of little else. Some spend hours describing single meals. This concerns me." "I understand, sir. Do you?" "I have conquered 47 worlds. I have commanded millions of soldiers. I have never seen my staff become distracted by anything as trivial as food." General Crix sat at the table Daeho had prepared. The meal was arranged like a work of art. 12 different dishes in small portions, each one showcasing different aspects of flavor and technique. "Explain what I am about to experience," the general commanded. "Each dish represents a different combination of tastes and textures. Start with the lighter flavors, and work toward the stronger ones. This allows your palate to appreciate the full range without overwhelming your senses." General Crix picked up a piece of grilled beef with his eating implements. He chewed slowly. His 4 black eyes focused on nothing but the food in his mouth. The reaction was unlike anything Daeho had seen before. General Crix stopped chewing entirely. He closed all 4 eyes and remained perfectly still for nearly 5 minutes. When he opened his eyes again, they seemed different somehow. "Less cold. What was in that meat?" he asked quietly. "A marinade made from fermented fruit, aged protein extracts, and spices that enhance umami flavors. The sensation was ... General Crix paused. There's no word in our language. In Korean, we might say it was transcendent. Beyond ordinary experience, transcendent. The general repeated the word like he was learning a new concept of physics. He continued eating each with intense concentration. When he tried the fermented vegetables, he made the same humming sound Daeho had heard from other officers. When he tasted the complex soup, he asked for a second serving. By the end of the meal, General Crix had been sitting at the table for 2 hours. This was unprecedented. Vorthok normally consumed their nutrition paste in less than 5 minutes. "Human," he said finally, "for over 1,000 years, my species has pursued only efficiency and conquest. We eliminated art, music, and pleasure from our society because they served no functional purpose." "Yes, sir. But this experience you have provided, it serves no functional purpose, yet it is ... valuable. How do I reconcile this contradiction? Maybe some things have value that cannot be measured by function alone." General Crix stared at the empty dishes. If we were wrong about food, what else might we have been wrong about? It was the most dangerous question any Vorthok had ever asked. The emergency alarm woke Daeho at dawn. Red lights flashed in his quarters, and a mechanical voice announced that all human workers should report to their stations immediately. Something important was happening. When he reached the kitchen, Sub-Commander Thex was already waiting. The alien looked different. Its movements were more nervous than usual, and its head kept turning toward the windows. "What is happening?" Daeho asked. "A ship has arrived from the Vorthok homeworld. Inquisitor Nexel is here to investigate reports about this facility." "What kind of reports?" "Reports that officers here are not performing their duties efficiently. Reports that they are distracted by trivial activities. Reports that they are exhibiting behavior that is inconsistent with Vorthok protocols." Daeho felt his stomach turn cold. Someone had complained about the cooking demonstrations to the highest levels of Vorthok government. "Inquisitor Nexel represents the old ways," Dex continued. "Pure functionality. No deviation from established procedures. No exploration of non-essential activities." "Oh, what does this mean for me?" "You will prepare one final meal. For Inquisitor Nexel, if the meal proves that human food has no significant effect on Vorthok behavior, you may continue working. If it proves otherwise..." Dex did not finish the sentence, but Daeho understood. If the Inquisitor decided that cooking was corrupting Vorthok officers, Daeho would be eliminated along with any evidence of his work. Park Hyun-woo managed to visit during the morning. Shift change. He brought urgent news from the Resistance Network. "The ship that arrived carried 50 purist guards," he whispered. "Elite soldiers who serve directly under the Inquisitor. They are already questioning officers about their recent activities." "What are they finding?" "Officers who spend hours discussing flavor combinations. Officers who request specific types of meals instead of accepting standard nutrition. Officers who use words like delicious and pleasure in their reports." "How bad is this?" "Very bad. 3 officers have already been arrested for behavior modification. The Inquisitor believes they have been infected with human psychological contamination." Ho sat down heavily. Everything he had built over the past weeks was falling apart. "There is more," Hyun-woo continued. "General Crix has been called before the Inquisitor for questioning. Some of his staff reported that he spent 2 hours eating a single meal. In Vorthok society, this is considered evidence of severe mental dysfunction. What will happen to him? If he cannot explain his behavior satisfactorily, he will be removed from command and sent for psychological reconditioning." After Hyun-woo left, Daeho spent the rest of the morning thinking about what to cook for Inquisitor Nexel. This would be the most important meal of his life. Not just his life, but possibly the lives of every Vorthok. An officer who had experienced the pleasure of good food. Geo Minho brought more disturbing news during lunch. "I accessed the medical files of officers who have been eating your food," he said. "Their brain scans show permanent changes. New neural pathways. Enhanced activity in regions associated with pleasure and individual preference. Can those changes be reversed? Not without destroying large portions of their brains. Once a Vorthok experiences flavor and pleasure, They cannot go back to being satisfied with pure functionality. So the Inquisitor is right. I have contaminated them. Contaminated is the wrong word. You have awakened parts of their minds that were always there, but never used. You have shown them what it means to be individuals instead of just parts of a collective machine. That afternoon, Inquisitor Nexel arrived at the kitchen. Deho had expected another large warrior like General Crix. Instead, the Inquisitor was smaller and older. Its black armor was simple and undecorated. Its movements were precise and calculated. When it looked at Deho, its ancient black eyes showed no emotion at all. "You are the human responsible for corrupting my officers," Nexel said. Its voice was cold and mechanical. "I only cooked food, sir. Food that has caused behavior modification in trained Vorthok personnel. Food that has made them question established protocols and waste time on non-essential activities. I did not intend to cause problems. Tension is irrelevant. Results are what matter. You will now prepare a meal for me? I will experience these so-called flavor sensations and determine whether they pose a threat to Vorthok society." Deho realized this was his only chance. If he could not convince Inquisitor Nexel that cooking was harmless, everything would end. Not just for him, but for all the officers who had discovered the joy of good food. But how could he convince someone who represented everything that was rigid and unchanging about the Vorthok society? Then he remembered something Minho had told him. Vorthok brains were highly susceptible to certain chemical compounds found in Earth's spices, especially capsaicin and fermented products. The older the Vorthok, the stronger the effect. Inquisitor Nexel was very old. Deho began preparing the most complex meal he had ever attempted. Not just Korean food, but a fusion of techniques and ingredients from dozens of worlds. He used every flavor-enhancing compound he had discovered, every spice that triggered positive brain chemistry, every fermentation technique that created the deepest umami flavors. The centerpiece was a soup that had been simmering for weeks in the growing facility. Made from ingredients that did not exist on any single world, but combined elements from across the galaxy. It smelled like the essence of everything delicious that had ever been created. He served the meal on the finest plates the kitchen could synthesize, arranged not just for nutrition, but as a work of art that would be beautiful to look at. Inquisitor Nexel sat at the table with the same emotionless expression. It picked up the first item, a piece of meat that had been marinated for hours in compounds designed to trigger pleasure responses in ancient Vorthok brains. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Inquisitor Nexel stopped moving completely. Its ancient eyes became wider than Deho had ever seen from any Vorthok. It chewed the meat with extreme slowness, as if trying to understand what was happening to its senses. Then it made a sound that no Vorthok had made in over 1,000 years. A deep, rumbling noise that seemed to come from the very core of its being. "What is this sensation?" Nexel whispered. "Flavor, sir. Taste. Pleasure. Impossible. These concepts were eliminated from our society millennia ago. They serve no functional purpose, But you are experiencing them now." Inquisitor Nexel tried the soup. The effect was even stronger. Its entire body began to shake. It closed its eyes and remained motionless for over 10 minutes. When it finally spoke, its voice was different, quieter, less certain. "For 3,000 years I have served the Vorthok Empire. I have enforced the principles of pure functionality. I have eliminated all traces of weakness and inefficiency from our society, yes, sir. But this experience you have provided, it is not weakness. It is ... enhancement. It makes existence more than mere survival." Inquisitor Nexel continued eating with growing intensity. Each dish seemed to have a stronger effect than the last. By the end of the meal, the ancient Vorthok was making continuous humming sounds and moving with less mechanical precision. "Human," it said finally. "If such experiences are possible, what else has our society discarded in the pursuit of efficiency?" "I do not know, sir. Art, music, individual expression, love. We eliminated all of these things because they did not serve our conquest goals. But if pleasure has value, we did not recognize. Perhaps these other concepts do as well." the most powerful inquisitor in the Vorthok Empire, was questioning the very foundations of their civilization, and it was all because of a simple meal cooked with care. The news of Inquisitor Nexel's transformation spread through the Vorthok fleet faster than anyone expected. Within hours of his meal with Deho, reports reached the homeworld that their most respected Inquisitor was questioning fundamental principles of Vorthok society. The response was swift and divided. Half of the Vorthok High Command declared Nexel mentally compromised and demanded his immediate removal. The other half supported his calls for investigation into what they had lost in their pursuit of pure functionality. On Earth, the split became even more dramatic. Day-Ho watched from his kitchen window as Vorthok ships began moving into different formations. Some remained in their original positions above major cities. Others moved to form a separate fleet grouping. The unified occupation force was dividing against itself. Sub-Commander Thex arrived with urgent news. The fleet is split into two factions, Dex explained. The purists believe that exposure to human culture has infected us with dangerous weakness. They want to eliminate all humans immediately and return to traditional Vorthok ways. And the other faction, they call themselves Seekers. They believe we have discovered something valuable that was lost long ago. General Crix leads them now. What about Inquisitor Nexel? He has declared that Vorthok society made a terrible mistake 3,000 years ago. He says we chose survival over living, functionality over fulfillment. He wants to study everything we eliminated from our culture. Through the window, Deho could see the two fleets positioning themselves. The purist ships maintained their rigid formations and dark colors. The Seeker ships had begun displaying lights and patterns that seemed almost artistic. Park Hyen-Woo brought more detailed information during his next visit. The purists are planning to attack the Seeker fleet, he whispered. They believe the only way to save Vorthok civilization is to eliminate everyone who has been contaminated by human influence. How many ships does each side have? About half and half. But the purists have more weapons and their crews follow orders without question. The Seekers are struggling because their officers keep debating decisions instead of just obeying commands. Debating decisions? Another human concept they have learned. Individual opinion. Personal choice. Things that do not exist in traditional Vorthok military structure. That evening, General Crix visited Deho personally. The massive Vorthok commander looked tired in a way that seemed impossible for his species. Human. Your simple act of cooking has created the first civil war in Vorthok history, Crix said. I am sorry, General. I never intended to cause conflict. Do not apologize. You have given us something we did not know we needed. The ability to choose, to prefer one thing over another, to value experiences that serve no practical purpose, but make existence meaningful. What will happen now? The purists will attack us within days. They cannot allow our ideas to spread to other worlds. If Vorthok across the galaxy learn that there are alternatives to pure functionality, the entire empire will collapse. Will you fight them? We must, but we face a problem. Our crews are learning to think as individuals, but war requires unified action. The purists have discipline. We have questions. General Crix moved to the window and looked down at the city below. I've been studying human history through your databases, he continued. Humans have fought many wars about ideas, about the right to think differently, about freedom to choose individual paths instead of following group mandates. Yes, sir. How do humans fight for ideas while maintaining unity? Deho thought about this question. They fight for something they believe in, not because they are ordered to, but because they choose to protect what they value. And what do we value now? The right to experience beauty, the freedom to find joy in simple things, the ability to grow and change instead of staying the same forever. General Crix made the humming sound that had become common among Seekers. Then that is what we will fight for. Next morning brought terrible news. Kim Nayoung, the former anthropologist who had been studying Vorthok historical records, made a discovery that changed everything. She found Deho in the growing facility, where he was tending to vegetables that had become symbols of hope for many seekers. "I have been researching Vorthok archives," she said excitedly. "I found records from before their great transformation 3,000 years ago." "What kind of records?" "Cultural records. Art, music, poetry. The Vorthok were not always like this. They used to be creative beings who valued beauty and individual expression. What happened to change them? A war that nearly destroyed their entire species. They were attacked by enemies who used their love of art and beauty against them. The Vorthok decided that creativity was weakness and eliminated it from their society. So they chose survival over everything else." "Exactly. But the war ended thousands of years ago. The enemies are long gone. They have been living in a defensive posture against threats that no longer exist." This information spread quickly through the Seeker fleet. Many Vorthok began to understand that their current society was not their natural state, but a temporary emergency measure that had continued far too long. The discovery also reached the purest fleet. But their reaction was different. They saw it as proof that creativity and individual expression were dangerous weaknesses that had nearly destroyed their species once before. The battle began at dawn on the 7th. Day-Ho watched from the administrative complex as energy beams cut across the sky between the two fleets. Vorthok ships that had worked together for centuries were now firing on each other with devastating weapons. The purest fleet had superior firepower and coordination. Their crews followed orders precisely, and their attacks were methodical and efficient. But the Seeker fleet fought with something the purists did not understand: passion, individual initiative, the willingness to take risks to protect something they valued. Seeker pilots made creative tactical decisions that confused purist commanders. Seeker crews worked together not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to support each other. The battle was fierce but brief. When it ended, nearly half of both fleets had been destroyed, but the Seekers had won. General Crix contacted Day-Ho as the last purist ship retreated toward deep space. "It is over," the general said. "The purists will return to the homeworld and report that this entire fleet was lost to human contamination. They will warn other Vorthok to avoid contact with humans." Is that good or bad? It means we are free to build something new here. A society that combines Vorthok efficiency with human creativity. A culture that values both function and beauty. What about Earth? Earth will be our partner, not our conquest. We will learn from each other instead of one dominating the other. Day-Ho looked out at the city where humans and Vorthok were already working together to rebuild what the war had destroyed. The occupation was over. Something entirely new was beginning, and it had all started with a simple meal shared between former enemies. 6 months after the Vorthok Civil War, Seoul looked like a completely different city. The dark metal buildings that the aliens had constructed now had gardens growing on their sides. Human and Vorthok engineers worked together to redesign structures that were both efficient and beautiful. Day-Ho stood in his new kitchen, which was 10 times larger than his original workspace. It was no longer just a place for cooking demonstrations. It had become the first human Vorthok cultural exchange center, where the most important diplomacy happened around dinner tables. Today was special. Representatives from 12 other worlds were visiting to learn about the peaceful revolution that had transformed both human and Vorthok society. Lee Sojin, the former resistance fighter, now served as Director of Cultural Integration. She worked with Vorthok seekers to establish similar exchange centers in other cities around the world. "Are you ready for today's demonstration?" she asked Day-Ho. "Think so. But I never expected to be cooking for beings from 12 different planets. You changed to civilizations by cooking for 5 Vorthok officers. I think you can handle a few more." Park Hyunu, now the communications director for the joint human-Vorthok government, brought the latest reports from around the galaxy. 3 more Vorthok colonies have declared independence from the Purist Empire, he announced. They want to establish seeker societies based on what we have built here. How is the Purist Empire responding? Day-Ho asked. They are trying to maintain strict isolation. No contact with humans or any other species that might contaminate their pure functionality, but it is difficult to maintain an empire when you refuse to interact with the outside universe. The kitchen filled with delegates from across the galaxy. Some were humanoid. Others looked like living crystals or floating energy clouds. A few communicated through color changes in their skin. General Crix, now calling himself Cultural Ambassador Crix, introduced each delegation. These representatives come from worlds that have heard about our transformation, he explained. They want to understand how species that were enemies became partners through the simple act of sharing meals. What exactly do they want to learn? Deho asked. How to resolve conflicts without violence. How to bridge differences between cultures. How to find common ground when species seem to have nothing in common. The demonstration began with Deho explaining the basic principles of cooking. Not just the techniques, but the philosophy behind them. Cooking is about taking different ingredients and finding ways to make them work together, he said. Some ingredients are sweet. Others are bitter. Some are soft. Others are hard. But when you combine them correctly, they create something better than any individual part. A crystalline being from the Rigel system asked, how does this apply to relationships between different species? Every species has different strengths and different perspectives. Humans are creative, but sometimes inefficient. Vorthok are organized, but sometimes rigid. When we work together, we can be both creative and efficient. But what about species that seem completely incompatible? Asked a floating energy being. Look at this dish, Deho said, pointing to a soup he had prepared. It combines ingredients from 7 different worlds. Some of these ingredients are toxic to each other in their pure forms. But when you prepare them correctly, they create something delicious and nutritious. You are saying that incompatible elements can become compatible through proper preparation. The energy being asked, exactly. But it requires patience, understanding, and willingness to change. Ko Min Ho, now the director of Interspecies Medical Research, presented his findings about how shared meals affected brain chemistry across different species. When beings eat together, their brains release chemicals that promote trust and cooperation, he explained. This happens in humans, Vorthok, and most other sentient species. Sharing food is a universal language that transcends biological differences. What about species that do not eat food? Asked a delegate whose species absorbed energy directly from their sun. The principle still applies. Any shared positive experience can create the same brain chemistry. Music, art, games, or even collaborative problem solving. The most important moment came when Inquisitor Nexel, now calling himself Philosopher Nexel, addressed the gathering. For 3,000 years, my species believed that survival required eliminating all non-essential experiences, he said. We thought efficiency and functionality were the only values worth pursuing. What changed your mind? Asked a reptilian delegate. One meal, one simple human meal that showed me what we had lost: beauty, joy, the satisfaction of experiencing something wonderful for its own sake. Not because it served a practical purpose. But how do you balance efficiency with these other values? We learned that they are not opposites. A society that values both efficiency and beauty is stronger than one that pursues only one or the other. Workers who find joy in their tasks are more productive than those who work only from duty. Yang Sora, who now managed interspecies communication networks, shared reports from around the galaxy. 47 worlds have requested assistance in establishing cultural exchange programs, she announced. The idea is spreading faster than we expected. What about military conflicts? Asked a delegate from a war-torn system. 12 active conflicts have agreed to ceasefire negotiations that include shared meals between opposing leaders. 6 of those conflicts have already reached peaceful resolutions, and the day concluded with the largest shared meal in Earth's history. Beings from 13 different worlds sat around tables throughout the Cultural Exchange Center, eating food prepared by human and Vorthok chefs working together. Deho watched as species that had never met before began communicating through gestures and shared appreciation for good food. Language barriers dissolved when beings could point to something delicious and make universal sounds of satisfaction as the evening ended. General Crix found Deho cleaning dishes in the kitchen. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not reported for work assignment that day?" Crix asked. "Sometimes. But I think something like this would have happened eventually. Because the desire for beauty and joy exists in most thinking beings. It just needed the right opportunity to emerge. And you provided that opportunity. I just cooked some food. Everything else came from people choosing to be open to new experiences." Crix helped Deho finish cleaning the dishes. It was a task that served no practical purpose for a former military commander, but it brought him satisfaction. "What is next for our society?" Crix asked. "I think we keep growing. Keep learning from each other. Keep sharing what we have learned with others who want to build something better. And cooking will remain central to this process. Cooking will always be important, but the real recipe for revolution is not about food. It is about showing people that there are alternatives to the way things have always been done." Deho looked out the window at the city below. Humans and Vorthok walked the streets together. Children of both species played in parks that had been designed by mixed teams of engineers and artists. Former enemies had become friends through the simple act of choosing to see each other as individuals worth knowing. 6 months ago, all resistance had been crushed. The human spirit seemed broken. The Vorthok Empire appeared unstoppable, but revolution had come anyway. Not through violence or grand gestures, but through small acts of kindness. Through the willingness to share something beautiful with former enemies, through the courage to believe that different did not have to mean incompatible. The resistance had never been crushed. It had just been waiting for the right recipe, and that recipe, Deho had learned, was surprisingly simple. Take individuals from different backgrounds. Add patience, understanding, and genuine care. Mix gently with shared experiences that bring joy. Allow time for trust to develop. Season with hope and willingness to change. Serve with an open heart. The result was not just a meal, but a new way of living. A society where former enemies could become partners. Where efficiency and beauty could coexist. Where the simple act of cooking for someone could transform the galaxy. Deho smiled as he turned off the lights in his kitchen. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to share what they had learned. But tonight, he was content knowing that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with something as simple as a well-cooked meal shared between friends.